My name is Luke, and this presentation will give an introduction to the future of human transport. Specifically, I will cover what the near future will look like with respect to the synchronization of air and ground travel. Most of the information presented was gathered from interviews with various autonomous vehicle startups in the Bay Area, Uber, Airbus, and the FAA. Picture the day where you wake up, you go through your morning routine, you request an autonomous ground vehicle pickup at your house, get dropped off at the nearest heliport or vertiport in this case, where your autonomous air vehicle is waiting. You hop in and transit 100 miles in about 20 minutes and arrive at work in about 30 minutes from the time you left your house, as opposed to the 2 to 3 hours it would have taken you to drive the same distance. This may seem like a reality that is way far off. Fortunately, this reality will be here before we know it, thanks to innovators in Silicon Valley and across the world that wish to revolutionize human transport. Autonomous cars and trucks are waiting to be unleashed, and not too far behind them will be their air support. However, the air support industry is filled with regulatory issues and policy issues, some that haven't even been thought about yet. This on-demand aviation revolution will complete the loop in human transport if it can overcome the technology, policy, and regulatory hurdles. Traffic problems are only getting worse as populations in urban areas increase, particularly in megacities or those urban areas with over 10 million inhabitants. A good example of this problem is in Sao Paulo, which set a record in the year 2014. On the roads around that city that year, the rush hour traffic stretched out for 344 kilometers. According to a study, these huge backups in Sao Paulo cost the Brazilian economy at least $31 billion a year. Another study found that Londoners lose the equivalent of 35 working days per year idling in traffic. As you look at the map, you can see that Sao Paulo is not alone in terms of population, and the problem of ground transportation will only get more severe. The cities in blue are the largest cities in the world. The shaded numbers, or light blue numbers, are their current populations, and the darker bold numbers are the projected populations for the year 2030, showing over a 10% increase. Before getting too deep, it would be good to know what an autonomous air vehicle is. Air vehicles that can take off and land vertically are called VTOLs, VTOL, which stands for Vertical Takeoff and Land, and they do not need to follow fixed routes. Trains, buses, and cars all funnel people from A to B along a limited number of dedicated routes, exposing travelers to serious delays in the event of a single interruption. VTOLs, by contrast, can travel toward their destination independently of any specific path, making route-based congestion less prevalent. Recent technology advances have made it practical to build this new class of VTOL aircraft. Over a dozen companies with multiple different design approaches are working to make VTOLs a reality. Currently, the closest equivalent technology is the helicopter. But helicopters are noisy, inefficient, polluting, and expensive for mass-scale use. VTOL aircraft will make use of electronic propulsion, so they have zero operational emissions and will likely be quiet enough to operate in cities without disturbing the neighbors. At flying altitude, noise from advanced electric vehicles will be barely audible. Even during takeoff and landing, the noise will be comparable to existing background noise. These VTOL designs will also be markedly safer than today's helicopters, because VTOLs will not need to be dependent on any single part to stay airborne, and will ultimately use autonomy technology to significantly reduce operator error. Before VTOLs can operate in any country, they will need to comply with regulations from aviation authorities, namely the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration and European Aviation Safety Agency, who regulate 50% and 30% of the world's aviation activity, respectively. The FAA recently issued an update to the Title 14 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 23, that overhauls the airworthiness standards for general aviation airplanes weighing less than 19,000 pounds with 19 or fewer seats. This is important because VTOLs fall under this regulation. With the change, innovators will be able to more rapidly produce aircraft without overly prescriptive design requirements. As briefly mentioned, before an aircraft is produced for commercial cellular use, it is given a special airworthiness certificate in the experimental category for research and development. This is a short part of the development process for piloted aircraft. It involves negotiating operating limitations, which allows flight testing away from congested areas. According to the timeline on the slide, some agencies expect the testing and development to be complete around 2020 and the first flight operations to begin by 2025. The initial price case to produce a VTOL is justified by a fully optioned Bell 206 helicopter, which is approximately $1.2 million at a production rate of 12 units per year. It is likely that to achieve the $600,000 near-term price in annual production of 500 units per year would be required, and to achieve the $200,000 price in annual production volume of 5,000 units per year would be required. Achieving such high production volumes would be transformative for the vertical lift industry, even across all of aerospace. Such production rates, however, have not been seen with any aircraft since 1946, when about 48,000 small aircraft were produced over a dozen or so model types. Not only will batteries for VTOL aircraft need to develop rapidly, but so too will the airspace management environment. The density of air vehicles will increase dramatically, and it will be crucial to manage this environment effectively. The challenge of flying autonomous vehicles over urban areas is that no country in the world today allows drones without remote pilots to fly over cities, with or without passengers. In February of 2016, Airbus Helicopters and the Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore signed a memorandum of understanding allowing Airbus Helicopters to test a drone parcel delivery service on the campus of the National University of Singapore in mid-2017. The goal of the project is to assess the efficiency and economic effectiveness of such a transport system and provide tangible proof to authorities and the general public that commercial drones can indeed operate safely over urban areas. In the U.S., there are close to 6,000 helipads, with all but 66 for private use. Most of this infrastructure is essentially unused. After years without use, many helipads have been declared inactive and for emergency use only. These existing helipads, as well as any new helipads, will have to be created in order to support future on-demand air travel. According to research done by Uber, millions of hours are wasted on the road worldwide. In 2015, the average San Francisco resident spent 230 hours commuting between work and home. That's 500,000 hours of productivity lost every single day. In Los Angeles and Sydney, residents spend 7 whole working weeks each year commuting, 2 of which are wasted unproductively, stuck in gridlock. In many global cities, the problem is more severe. The average commute in Mumbai exceeds a staggering 90 minutes. On-demand aviation has the potential to radically improve urban mobility, giving people back time lost in their daily commutes. Just as skyscrapers allowed cities to use limited land more efficiently, urban air transportation will use three-dimensional airspace to alleviate transportation congestion on the ground. A network of small electric aircraft that take off and land vertically will enable rapid, reliable transportation between suburbs and cities and ultimately within cities. In conclusion, we covered the infrastructure, technology, policy, regulation, and cost for the future of air demand travel.